after thinking it over, no, feeling it over, and then thinking it over, there were things I should have said as my husband was leaving for good. For good. I don't think so. I could shrink the good down into a locket and wear it next to my heart, but even that little bit would break me. Yep, I should have said a lot of things. Like, we could start over. I'm still a great dancer. Wait, your underwear's in the dryer. I hate you. The children. I love you. I made you a cake. I'll make you laugh. Touch me. Please come back. But I didn't say anything. We had already said too much. Well, I guess this is where I should open a vein in case I need to get an IV started later and spill some facts about how it all began. He's the first man I see that night as I pace the gallery. It's an opening for an exhibit of drawings by a group of sculptors. I look around the packed gallery for anyone I know. Most of the crowd are Adam's family lookalikes, pallid, gangly men in black, and women with long, layered hair. They murmur without looking at each other or the drawings on the walls. Both sexes sway slightly as they sip wine, inhaling cigarette smoke deeply to accentuate waists that are cinched with thin, colorful belts. But I've already seen him. As chic as a 20s movie star, high cheekbones, face angular, tan, smooth, his shiny hair swings into his eyes and his up-tilted head catches the light. Among all the darkly clad people, he gleams so brightly in that first moment, he could be the sun outside a train window. Everyone and everything else are just scenery whizzing by. I notice he's wearing a scarf in summer, twisted around a slate gray shirt under a perfectly tailored creamy linen suit, a tall version of the Little Prince. There's a buzz coming from all the women around him. So I hear he comes from Germany, and his name is Tobin Kleinherz. But the secret name I give him is Wears Scarves in Summer. Oh my God. Looking back, especially at the good, is more painful than I'd imagined. Though there was nothing in between seeing Tobin and falling for him. Love was a parrot on my shoulder, repeating his name. Did I fail to see some sign that we would end badly, like a flock of crows or snakes crawling along the sidewalk? Now, I'm standing here, between the before and after of love. Not a good spot, I know, but here I am. And a freshwater lake is out there in front of me. We were love. We were ships. Our bodies, fragile boats, are afloat. Water seeps into the carved-out part of his chest. My belly, our thighs, how we rise and fall together, our skin illumined from above and from each other. We stretch limbs like masts, bed linens taut to catch the wind, to carry us from certain shore. We push off each other, setting ravens free, love and water for days and nights. A dove returns with a twig in its beak, a sign that land, though unwelcome, is almost in sight. Tobin and I were married in a church on a hill in Lake Forest, Illinois. The wedding was a misty June day in the beginning of the 80s. Soon everything will be all wrong. Marriage is a high-flying risk, dizzying and invigorating as diving through clouds or throttling a car at full speed. You are socially, legally, economically, sexually, totally joined to one person. A person you choose in sickness and in health, but the priest didn't say in misery, did he? A few years after we married and into the marriage, I realized that Tobin has stopped stroking my hair. Then he graduates to never calling me by name, unless he's asking me to pick up his dry cleaning. Our children, Sparkly Ellender and Cuddly Marcus, don't seem to know anything that's going on. Until Tobin is watching a public television show. It's a series on World War II, a subject on which he is obsessed. I come into the room. Tobin, I have to talk to you. No answer. The children's daycare has to be paid by tomorrow. Background rumbling of weapons of destruction. We're 3 months late. No answer. And more artillery sounds from electric box in front of German husband. Tobin. He turns up the box. The children run into the room to see what the noise is. Tobin grabs the nearest lamp and hurls it to the ground. More loud noise and shattering of glass. The children stare. He picks up the television and stands over me as I cower, not the most dignified of positions, especially in front of the children. Television is about to turn my brain into rot. In an odd and electrified moment, we both know he's going to kill me in front of our 2 children. Of course, he doesn't kill me, but our love dies. How to poison. I'm sure there are shelves and shelves of books that deal with how to inform children that their parents are splitting up. There must be books that outline a way to do it gently and with the least amount of harm. Maybe Tobin and I should have read one. All I know is that the children, Ellender, age 8, and Marcus, age 7, are frozen on the landing of the stairs when I come home. They look at me as if I'm an intruder. Daddy told us not to worry, that you're getting divorced, Ellender yells at me. Marcus plugs his ears, screaming, I don't want to talk about it. Is it true, Mommy? Ellender cries. Is it? An explosion inside me goes nowhere. I want to send out comfort, but right now the children seem like an investment gone bad. I can only say this. You can try as hard as you can to fool yourself, but you are not in divorce mode until the children know. And once they do, everything that follows will leave bite marks. After. In lieu of morphine, there's chocolate. I devour it, try not to. Getting out of bed is the equivalent of miles of brisk walking. I feel paralyzed. I need to see the humor. I have no money, no car, no toilet paper. I slog through snow like Julie Christie in Dr. Zhivago, but instead of getting to Omar, I reach a nearby restaurant and steal the extra roll of toilet paper. More than half my bed is covered with open books, occupying roughly the same amount of space Tobin would have. I skim and switch between them, then settle into one all night long, whenever I forget that beds are for resting, for sleeping, for making love. Reading is my substitute for sleep and my consolation prize for being alone. Sometimes I stay in bed all day long. Just enough guilt gives me the energy to shout into the kitchen where my children are milling around. I'll get up soon and make dinner. What are we having? They chorus. Kids, I don't know. Let me rest for a minute. My definition of motherhood, your child slits your jugular, laps up every lickable drop of blood, then with ruddy cheeks, he or she scoots off to college, saying to your inert form on the floor, thanks for everything. When we go through any craziness in life, somewhere along the way, we start thinking we are making good decisions. Wrong and wrong. We are not thinking clearly at all. The pieces are falling faster than we can pick them up. Run! You're in danger of being physically harmed, I scream. Child abuse, yells Ellender, running to her bedroom. Parent abuse, I yell back, chasing Marcus. I'm trying to get out of this house to go out if I can ever get out of this house. I play the piano to calm down, then stand at Ellender's closed door. You cannot forget the one rule in this house. Never throw objects at someone's face. I don't care, comes through the door. You have to care, I say. You would be sorry later if someone's eye was hurt. Besides, that's not the only rule, she says, sassier than a cat. Never put dishes with food or drink on the piano. Always establish your own personal rituals, Marcus yells from his room. Okay, I say, this is serious. You don't throw utensils at me or your brother in anger, ever, period. Silence. And you, Marcus, I say, because he's obviously listening, don't grab food from your sister or anything, period. Silence. Marcus? Yeah. I'm going out with our friend Quentin for a political rally. I need to know that you guys are going to get along. They both come out. I feel bad leaving them alone, but I don't ever have money for a babysitter. My parents, who are sometimes available for backup, are out of town. Stay out late, Mom, Marcus says. We want to see if we can handle it. Okay, I won't be far. You can reach me on my pager or Quen's cell phone. You know the number. Quentin and his lover are ordering drinks when I arrive. As soon as the program is underway, my pager goes off. Most likely Ellen and Marcus. They might be needing something, so I go over to tell Quentin. For a guy without kids, he's quick on the uptake. Without me asking, he hands me his cell phone, saying, take it on the way home. I call the kids. Mom, Ellen says, Marcus answered the phone, and it was this creepy guy. What? Why was he talking to him? I asked, getting my coat on. That's what I said. He asked if we were home alone. Who was he? I don't know. Marcus doesn't either. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I'll talk to you and Marcus as I'm driving home. Once in the car, I phone him. Marcus? Mom, I'm sorry I talked to him, but he kept asking questions. Honey, it's not your fault, but next time, don't talk to strangers on the phone. Okay, he says. Mom, are you good? Marcus, honey. The phone goes dead. I panic, try to breathe. You'll be there in 15 minutes, I comfort myself. I'm not sure if it's the phone that has run out of batteries or if something has happened to the kids. I dial our neighborhood police station. Hi, I'm on my way home and my children are waiting for me, but they received a weird phone call. Do you want us to send someone over? Yes, I'll be there any second myself, but I'm a little worried. I give her our address. How old exactly, ma'am, are your children, she says, exhibiting a disturbing officious tone. 7 and 8, almost 9. A friend was watching them. How easy it is to lie when a knife is to my heart. If they're home alone when the officers get there, ma'am, they'll have to be taken into custody. Double-edged swordish, Caucasian chalk circle-esque. I have called to protect my children and now risk having them taken away from me. I'll probably be back before they even get there, I say, noticeably hyperventilating and pressuring my foot on the gas pedal. Should I run red lights and get pulled over or risk arriving too late as my children drive off in a squad car? As I approach the house, I can already see the bright lights. I run inside. Luckily, it looks as if the 3 male police officers have only just walked in. Try to smile at them, I advise myself. Hugging Marcus tight, I think frantically, where's Ellender? She's the one I need. Hi, I'm so glad you're here, I say. I'll go get my daughter. Noticing her out of the corner of my eye, starting to walk down, I tear up the stairs. Hi, sweetie, I say, practically carrying her up to the landing, out of view of the officers. I put my finger to my mouth, bring her into the bedroom, soundlessly close the door. Ellender, I whispered deep in her ear, I need you to do this for me, or the police will take you away from me. You have to lie now and say that Nina was looking after you. I'm buzzing with so much fear I can't see her reaction. I hug her as we walk downstairs. Calm yourself. I hear in my brain, she'll be perfect. I say to the cops, well, thank you so much for coming. I was a bit worried with that crazy phone. The burly one interrupts. We'll need to talk to your daughter. She's the older one? Yes, I say, no problem. Honey, can you talk to the police officer? Sure, she says, my brilliant little actress. Honey, how long did Mommy leave you two alone tonight? Oh, we weren't alone, she says. Nina was looking after us. Who's she? Mom's friend. Where's she at now? Yawning, she says. Oh, she had to return a movie. A+. We'll have to talk to her. Ma'am, do you have her phone number? Of course, I say, writing it down, knowing she's away for the weekend. The other officer calls. No answer, he says, and hangs up. Yes. They all three head for the door. Good sign. Have a good evening, ma'am, one says. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it, I say, slowly following them out. Once they're gone, I collapse on the couch. Marcus and Ellender sit on either side of me. Guys, I'm really sorry. That was an experiment that just didn't work. I'm sorry for talking to that guy, says Marcus. Sweetie, I say, hugging them close. There's a lot of creeps out there. I'm just glad you're both okay. That's all I care about. We never find out who he is, but the menacing call magnifies our sense of being without a protector. I won't leave them alone again, but I do feel alone. I'm not a stay-at-home monk, but almost. They come in the night, men. A few young, a few old, with an internal map dotted with need, leading to the destination of moi. And I don't even sleep with most of them. They say I'm the warmest of women. Perhaps I'm fevering? I've been living alone with my kids for 3.5 years. And one man says, I bet no one has ever called you a bitch. He's right. But I've noticed bitches keep their men, lashing out at them when finding the slightest fault, demanding more and more until their man feels no longer worthy of licking any part of her except her boot spur. An acquaintance of mine complained about her husband buying her a red BMW. I told him I wanted a dusky color, she whined. Why does she get a BMW and bitch about it and I get zilch and happily wait for breadcrumbs? Why do men stay with the bitches and leave nice women like me? Because the night belongs to the bitch. That's why. But there are intimate penalties. It's snowing, wet clumps of white that stick to our coats like burrs, and the wind is picking up. Tobin brushes the snow off my hair and pulls up my hood to cover my head. His warm hands hold my face, and our eyes almost meet before I see that the snowflakes are tinged with orange. My first thought is, must be lights from an ambulance, but the silence is so thick you can hear the orange snow landing on the ground. My second thought is more complicated and comes from a cloud snowing psychobabble, but seems to me to be true, at least for the time being. Yes, love is magic, but it is also pure deception. Love is the ultimate cover-up, blanketing every disappointment and betrayal. At least my brand of love, a non-bitch form of it, the kind that men like Tobin learn to run from because they, like untamed animals, need to play hardball. I reach under Tobin's coat to pull him closer, and my fingers touch his naked skin. The orange snowflakes are forming into balls. Fear and love makes me catch them before they dissolve at our feet. Tobin's coat is in shreds and falls off his body. He stands there, naked before me, and then he disappears. Ellender, Marcus! They're pretending they don't hear me. Come over here. It's pretty nice. The lake is turquoise, brushed with pale, pale sage and bubbly white foam and snow. No response. Oh, wait, I think I can see your dad. Wait a second. Oh, now they're showing some interest. Your dad? Your dad's out there. He's in a chunk of ice, way out there on the horizon. I wonder if he's all right. Maybe he'll send us a sign, like smoke signals. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, there's a little puff. Do you see it, Marcus? Like a cloud forming. Ellender, look. See, Ellender, right there. It's getting bigger and forming letters. T and A. And what's that? Oh yeah, it's a K. Take the, I can make out C-H-I. Take the children home. Oh wait, it's still coming. Take the children home. I'm okay. We're better than okay. Do you hear that? We're doing great. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. It's a great turnout for such a scary evening. It's a lot colder in Chicago, though, where I'm coming from.
And I was just thinking about the way you're structuring things and the forms you're working with here. I kept thinking of the writer Pam Houston. I don't know if you're familiar with her work. She wrote a book called Cowboys Are My Weaknesses.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I've heard of that book, yeah.
And I think there's something about the almost aphoristic sort of way you treat these sort of moments from the narrative you're building here, but yet the narrative itself remains. There's a consistency at the same time. There's a broken quality to it that I really like. Can you talk about some of your influences?
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's really interesting and perceptive that you say about the aphoristic, because there's 8 different parts of the book. It has a lot of scaffolding in the book because I wanted to tell the story in such a way that it would be from a traumatic sort of a mind in trauma. So when you have trauma, I think you sort of you go back and forth in thinking, trying to piece together what happened and whether you missed signs along the way and how you could have prevented it. And I think the mind jumps back and forth and says, oh, well, when did it start? And oh my gosh, should I have done this? And then you're in the present, but then you're in the past, and you really don't have a future at that point. So it's sort of a jagged puzzle. And so there's a lot of scaffolding in the book because of that jagged quality. And so I wanted to give enough form to the structure that it could be easily followed. And every segment of the book has an aphorism. And one of the aphorisms is, love is the dog we let into our bed even when it bites. So every section has an aphorism, and then every 50 pages is a clue, clue number 1, 2, and then the final deadly clue. They're all clues that your relationship is going bad. And so, yeah, the aphoristic quality, and just, I guess, I don't know if I answered your question, but I just felt like since I wanted to have this mind that was just totally in flux and trying to grasp, it's sort of like a catastrophe. You have an earthquake, in this case kind of a soul quake, and everything is debris and detritus, and you don't know where you're standing, and so you're trying to piece together things in your head of what happened. And
the narrator's kind of seeing stars that comes through.
Yeah, exactly. And this is I did write extra things for this to make it a dramatization. So there's a few intact scenes, but the rest of it is just for the play, and it's not actually appearing in the book. But
could you give us some of those clues that your relationship is going bad?
Yeah, sure. One of them, I think the final deadly clue sort of speaks to a lot of people usually. I think it's she no longer feels protected by him, and he no longer feels needed by her. That's another one. Let me think. There's a lot of them, every 50 pages. So I'm drawing a blank of the other clues. What? Yeah, you have to find. Yes, good plug, Letitia. Very good. The other clue. Do you remember any of the clues? I'm just drawing a blank.
I'm drawing a blank.
Wow, this is not good. On to the next. You'll have to read the book and see. Are you asking from a personal standpoint, or?
No.
I hope not. I sincerely hope not.
It's always up and up.
Well, I'm sure I chose a very weird subject because I'm sure no one has ever gone through heartbreak in this whole room. I'm sure it's a very foreign subject for everyone. So.
I actually had a related question about the way you structured the book. And you're also a musician, predominantly. You were a classical pianist.
Right. I was trained to be a concert pianist, so now I write a lot of music. I have a song, Undoing I Do. It's available on iTunes, and actually I have a lot of really cool musicians playing, so I have a little street cred here. My brother-in-law used to play with Smashing Pumpkins, and now he plays with Morrissey, and he plays on the song that I wrote. And we have some other really cool musicians. Morrissey.
Oh, I'm dating myself. I'm wondering about
the Smiths, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. How your music maybe works with your writing. A friend of mine wrote a story that was based on the musical concept of a fugue, where he wrote the same story several times, but with variations, and he deliberately was working with it. So I'm wondering if there's any sense of musicality in your writing.
Well, totally. I mean, the character in the book is, oddly enough, also a musician. And so I do have a soundtrack to the book, so when it's on my website, but it's a partial soundtrack. And the songs that are mentioned in the book that she's writing to cope with her tragedy, her own little personal hell, are on the soundtrack on my website. And again, the theme song is, you know, on iTunes, and then I have a music video as well. But yeah, the way I structured it, there's a lot of musical terms, and the first chapter is actually final chord. So, and it is another way that I wrote it, I think, that made it seem a little bit elegiac, because you know that the arc of the story is that she's getting divorced. The first chapter is the complete implosion of the relationship, and he moves out that day. And well, there is a little prelude to that, and it is actually prelude to a burn, and it's their consummation night. So it's consummation, and then the leaving of the husband. So it's sort of slam bam, and just hits the ground running. So you know right away, sort of in the style of Brecht, I think, that like when the Berliner Ensemble did Brecht's work, Mother Courage or whatever, they had signage, and it said something like, "In this chapter, you will see the mother dying, and the baby will get thrown into the river." And then, so it has this quality of not only dread, but just extreme sadness and grieving, that you know this is going to happen, but you're going to see it unfolding before your eyes. So I kind of like that as an example of kind of for this particular story, because I thought, well, we all know that, you know, people fall in love, and then the next moment it's like a before and an after. You know, before you're in love and people can't believe it, and oh my God, she looks great and he looks great, and they're in love, and then the next second it's over and you're like, oh, how did that happen? They look horrible, and people are looking cadaverous and can't eat, and it's just terrible. And so I thought that's kind of a good way to start, just, you know, that it's over. But there was a beautiful scene, like I guess the first line of the book is, men and women should meet in beautiful rooms, stroke each other for hours, and then go back to their separate lives. So that's the aphorism of the whole book, and then every part has its own aphorism. So that sort of disproved that through the characters, that it would be nice in a way. You'd never have divorce if we all sort of beautiful roomed it. But then it doesn't happen that way, because you want to be with that person, because you fall in love and you fall into their life. So then I think the arc of the story is just that happens, and then it's this sort of going back and forth into also sort of like part of the scene of Tobin and the snow is a sort of an unattainable past or an unattainable future where, wow, this, I should have seen it. I should have seen this happening, but I didn't see it. Any other questions? I also, when I do Barnes & Noble readings or Borders readings this year, I've had a breakup box, and people have put in their choice breakup stories, and I've read them, and it's been really fun. I mean, probably not for them, but it's been. Does anybody have any particularly strange or wild breakup story they want to share with everybody in the whole room?
You can say it's your friend, not you.
Is it Josh? Josh?
Actually, well, I have a question, but I had
Sure.
a breakup story.
Say whatever you want, or tell us what you like to write. Or I mean, I'm interested in hearing what the students do in their time when they're sitting in front of a computer as well.
Well, I mean, it was more a matter of coincidence than anything else. And in retrospect, I realized how insensitive I was. But there was a dance that I had gone back home because it was my birthday weekend, and on that same day, there was my high school's homecoming dance. It was my freshman year, and I was supposed to go with an old friend. Well, this was also the point at which I realized that me and my ex we're my ex now, but at the time we were dating, and it was kind of the clicking point where I realized we weren't going to make it. And so we were kind of sitting on the couch, and I was just like, I don't think we can do this anymore. And she gives me this look, and then she just like collapses to the floor, which is exceptionally awkward because this is my first breakup.
Ouch.
She starts crying, and I'm like, and the only thing that can come to my mind is, you've got to stop crying, you're going to wake up my parents.
Oh no, oh no.
And so, and once again, I didn't realize until afterwards that about a couple minutes later, I was like, there were probably more sensitive ways to go about that particular situation. And I still suffer for it. We're friends, now, so I mean, I still.
Sure you are. Sure. That's what they all say.
It's been a long road. But I guess that kind of segues into my question. One of the things that we talked about, I took fiction with Dr. Moffat last semester, and one of the things that we always talked about was that, a lot of the things that you write about are in one way or another autobiographical, and has some sort of internal content. Do you feel like your book, kind of hits some crucial points? And if it hits a point that's sensitive, how do you write through that?
Well, actually, it's totally fictional work because I've never even met a man. I've never, no, just kidding. It's a lot of overlap in my life. But I felt what's really helpful is, and you're right that everything has an internal. I think of it kind of like any story you might write, and I like to write short stories as well. When you dream and you have all these characters in your dream, they're kind of like shadow selves. So people, your world is your oyster. You can pick any person you want, and you could use material and details from their life, and you can shift it. And I felt halfway through writing the book that I really did fictionalize it because I didn't have an axe to grind. I didn't want to do a Jerry Springer tell-all or a confessional style. And I also felt it could free me up to remember things that happened, even though I wasn't really remembering them in terms of the actual verity of it. Just kind of what I guess Lucy Greeley says when she wrote that book, Anatomy of a Face, if any of you have read that. And people said, oh my God, how did you remember all those details? And she said, wait a second, I didn't remember it, I wrote it. And that's what I think, in response to your question, that I think writing is different than remembering, but you do remember, and there's a lot of unconscious and emotional content that's coming out when you write, and you're filling in to the details so that it will make sense to someone who's reading it, and it's sort of a worn path through just all of these things that you could say, but then you make a path and you choose different things, and it serves from A to B. So the reader has meaning. There's meaning, and your job as a writer isn't to confound or befuddle people. So, yes, you do choose whatever you want, but it has to make sense from a structural and a tone standpoint and craft. There's a lot of craft involved, obviously. My editor. Pardon me?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you.
No. What?
No, I wasn't sure what that. I completely lost my train of thought. It was just that quick. But I guess it is nice to, I guess, as an attempt at, I'm attempting to write, and just hitting those points where you encounter this sort of, the emotional content behind what you're writing, and it's just, especially when you can write about a severe situation such as, a heartbreak or something like that, which I never write about because I'm too scared. But,
I think you need to get that distance, and I think our parents had their World War, and we have divorce. That's actually quite a good theme because I think it is it goes across the board. There's so many people who have gone through breakups or very severe divorces, and it is becoming enough of a theme that I think we can make art out of it, but it's kind of difficult. You do have to have a vehicle. So I think the confessional style isn't necessarily one that would be a good one for this. You'd maybe fictionalizing it, or it's like anything. There's all kinds of stories about love, and tons of them. Anna Karenina, or anything you can think of, and people keep telling the story over and over again. It just has to be told in a way that is interesting to people, and not cliche or just, oh, I fell in love and she had a heart of gold and she broke my heart. So. Oh, I'm sorry.
One of the things we're learning a few things in Dr. Moffat's 50-20 class, graduate class. One of the things is generation. We're learning how to generate our writing
Not to generate? Can you say that?
Generate your writing. What kind of techniques did you do to generate your flow of thought, and what authors influenced you?
Well, I tend to stay up all night, which is a very bad thing. But it's because I teach piano during the day, and so I sit at the piano and then I sit at the keyboard and then think, computer, oh, I'll just stay up for a few hours and write, and then suddenly the birds are chirping and it's very scary. So that kind of generates, because you get into this sort of fugue state of exhaustion. And I finished the book that way. It was not a good way to do it. I started the book about 12 years ago with the most high-minded motive, revenge. So, but then it quickly, instead of deteriorating, it sort of got a little more high-minded, and I realized actually what I'm writing about is love more than anything. And by the way, I don't usually sound like this. I've actually lost my voice 2 days ago, so I'm very sorry that I've heard it's called the Charleston cough. Yeah, I have it from Chicago though, so it's bizarre. But anyway, to generate writing, again, I just think it has to be a habit. It has to be something that you do. And in my case, I think I started it a long time ago, but then I had a theater company, so I did one-woman shows, and then I directed a little bit, so I kind of put it on hold for many years. And then Undoing I Do became kind of a little musical I did in Chicago. And from a musical, I went to Ragdale, which is in Lake Forest, and then I kind of started to fiendishly concentrate on the book and the core writing of it. And then I got an agent through, it's a very good agent in New York, but he actually lost my work about 5 times in a row. So it just shows you that, you'll send it and they'll say, oh, I lost it. And then you'll send it again, so, I lost it. So eventually it could work, but it's a little bit akin to being struck by lightning, I guess. And I'm probably the oldest first-time novelist to be published in the United States, I think. I think they're usually looking for 20-year-olds, but I feel honored, And to generate writing and my influences, well, I really like this one book, which I told Letitia about. It was the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1955, Sigrid Undset's book, Kristen Lavrans's daughter. And I really like her style. It's very terse and very dry, but it's in the 14th century, so it's this incredibly fabulous tale. And other influences, I don't know, when I was writing the book, I guess I just read all the time, so I read all kinds of things. And I read poetry, I read short stories, I read Frank O'Connor, I read metaphysical poetry, just anything to sort of just have fun while I'm doing it. And there's a lot of people, like Dorothy Parker had said, I guess famously, that some people like to have written. I actually like writing. I enjoy it. To me, it's kind of like practicing the piano. It's just fun. I just enjoy it. And I love editing. So I think the editing process is so fabulous because it gets better and better, or it should. And when my editor in New York would say, oh, could you take out this paragraph or something, I'd say, take the whole chapter out. She'd be like, what? I go, oh, just take out 50 pages right there. And I took out like 150 pages of the book, so it was a lot longer. But I just love killing my babies. I just really enjoy it. And because I think it gets it better. It just streamlines it much more. And so people who want to hang on to their work, I'm like trying to say to them, don't hang on to it. Just there's more where that came from. Just don't be afraid to let go. So authors, what's some of your favorite authors? I probably just love them all. I'm reading Willa Cather right now, Song of the Lark.
My ex-fiance was related to Willa Cather.
Pardon me?
My ex-fiance was related to Willa Cather.
Oh, very cool.
And I like Ray Bradbury.
Okay, neat. Love them all.
Sound like you're losing your voice. And
No. Anybody else want to talk? Say what they like to do, or what any other questions? I would love to hear from. I have to say that this university is so amazing. This theater and the people I've met today. I was telling Letitia, I don't think I've ever met so many fabulous people in a half an hour than I've met in Eastern Illinois University. Really, I met Daiva and Marty.
who are recruiting her to Scrabble, by the way.
Yes, I'm a convert, and my husband and I are going to be, And Bruce and Victoria, fabulous, and of course Letitia, who's amazing. And all of the students, too. It just seems like everybody's really with it here. So I think we'll move from Chicago and come here. My husband's a film critic up in Chicago area, so he's also a writer, which is helpful. He's my little secret weapon. And he was sort of like when, I guess, Tolstoy had the famous, in the margins, his wife, or was it Tolstoy or was it Dostoevsky, he wrote these copious notebooks, and she would come and write these horrible comments, and then he would say, "You bitch," and then he should say, "Yeah, I did not mean it that way, and yes, you did," and go buy bread or something. And so my husband would edit my work after I have another person I met at Ragdu who's a poet and edits my first versions. And I'm working on a second book, and he was just in town. That's why I'm sick, because we stayed up for 8 nights editing. We're insane. But my husband would come home, and after my editor had edited it, then he would edit it, and he would just write these things aside, slut and different things. I said, it was just fictional here, you know.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah. But it's fun having a person at home who can. I'm sorry, were you just raising your hand?
Yeah, I just had another question.
Sure.
I wrote a story in class called Space, and basically it was an account of a recent relationship that I was in that didn't pan out for myself. I like the fact that I started off with an argument, and I think that my professor said that worked well too, because it adds instant conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Dropping right to the conflict.
Right. Instead of having backstory, yeah.
And then throughout the course of my story, I have a guy driving about an hour and a half to another location, listening to different songs that kind of remind him of what he had with her. But then throughout the story, he realizes that he needs space, his space too, which is what I call this space. But
I like the title. That's really neat.
well, I often felt that I kind of maybe used too much, too many songs, kind of like a soundtrack. I think that way too. I'm sitting here like I could have named like 50 songs, and I just kind of think it made it muddled. Did you ever feel like in your stories that you were getting
Sidetracked?
sidetracked too?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, again, it's like, editing. Editing really helps when you're, working on something. But I think the songs were sort of a integral part of the scene. So it wasn't just, I'm going to drop the names of these songs she's composing right now. It was more, holistically built into the scene, like when she's in court and she's singing a song that she just wrote, and the judge is coming in and out, and people are like, who the hell is singing, in a divorce court? So I think it kind of works that way, that it has to be incorporated into the scene and make sense. So it can't just be sort of decoupaged onto, the structure of the book or what's happening. But, back there?
I'm working on my first novel as well, and I was just wondering if you had any advice as to what to do when you got a bad piece of writer's block. Because I find that when I work on a certain chapter for so long, I get so frustrated with it that oftentimes it's just like there's this big wall in the way. I can't really get around it. So.
Have some children. And then you'll really want to write, because you'll be changing diapers and you're like, could I just have this cast of mind where I can get into this imaginary world? No, writer's block, that's an interesting question. I think if you have writer's block, maybe you should tell yourself that you just should sit down and just do a free write or something. Just write no matter what, and just do I guess Annie Lamott says, do a shitty first draft and hope you don't die before, you can change it. Just get it out, and don't start editing yourself and think, oh, I don't know if it's going to be good. I don't know. Just don't have that part of your brain in your head. Just do it, and just feel lucky that you're able to do it. Mm.
So, being a writer and being a published author are two significantly different things. And in this coming economy, I imagine it would be even more difficult to be published. Tips, tricks, or business cards to pass on?
Business. Well, I mean, I guess that's why I kind of did the whole multimedia thing, because I feel like the more you can market yourself and you build your platform, sort of, that horrible term, but it is kind of important to have things. I have a web show coming up as well that is called Interview with a Broken Heart. And what we do is I interview people about their breakups, and then we have a panel of Saturday Night Live and Second City people who make fun of them. And it's hilarious. I'm not kidding. It's crazy funny, because people come and I'm like, open your heart to us. And we do this whole, then they start the little peanut gallery, and it gets very crazy. And we have a little gilded Kleenex box that gets rolled up onto the stage. And so that's a kind of a cool web show that I thought, well, I kind of want to continue this while I'm writing my second book, which has nothing to do with the first book at all. It's a lot more about sexual healing and sexual healing. I think that's enough. But it's very tantalizing. But and it's totally fictional. Has a little bit of sci-fi in it. So I kind of wanted to keep that stream going with the, yeah. No, I just going on here.
I was just wondering, you do so many different things: paint, compose, write. Do you find that like you use certain ones or certain outlets for like certain emotions? Or do you find that like your art as a whole kind of like progresses together and you kind of like find overlapping themes in all of them?
That's really interesting. I've always sort of struggled with the fact that I really love to write, and I've always written. So I just, since I've been really young, I filled up, like I have a whole bookshelf of blank books that are filled with drawings and writings, and they're just like, I just couldn't, I must be stopped. But yeah, so then I always did artwork as well, and I do composing, and I teach, and I do piano, and I do concerts too sometimes if I actually can practice. But I just try to do it all, basically, and I think I've concentrated in different segments of my life in different things. Right now I'm totally concentrating on the writing, because it's really difficult to do. I mean, it's hard to do everything at once at the same time, but I did a music video for this book. I did a song for this book. I designed, I did the dramatization, and the thing that I read today was done by an equity actor at Writers Theater in Glencoe, and it's near Chicago, and it's a fabulous theater, and they did a beautiful job. I wish you could have been here tonight. But so I try to do everything I can do and get my hand in it. And I think, anything you can bring, and lots of people are multidisciplined, artists that I know. And do you do more than one thing, or?
Oh, I can barely do one thing.
What about you? Do you do more than, yeah?
Yeah, I do.
What do you do?
Ceramics, photography, painting, writing, poetry.
Fabulous.
My next thing that I want to start getting into is performance art.
Fantastic. I've done that as well at the Art Institute. Yeah, performance art. That's a pretty trippy thing to do. Yeah, well, that's fabulous. Well, you sound like you're very talented. But they do feed on each other. I mean, I don't know why. To me, it seems like there's so many people that are talented, and I guess the danger is that you'd be kind of a dilettante and you would get nothing done. But sometimes it can actually be very advantageous, I think, to a product. If you do get something out, then you can sort of funnel all your other, talents and creativity and into that, and it can be very helpful. Because they're kind of looking for that too now, at least now. Because editors and when you're first time published, they don't do a lot for you either. You kind of got to do it all yourself. So.
Maybe one more question?
I think someone back there. Is someone back there raising their hand, or was I just imagining it?
Maybe no more questions.
Thank you so much for coming. This was a fabulous turnout, and delighted to be here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.